The evening air hung heavy with jasmine as Alicia Call hurried across the university quad, her portfolio clutched against her chest. The art department's annual showcase would open in 2 hours, and her centerpiece painting still needed final touches. At 21, with dreams as vast as her talent, Alicia moved with graceful determination, the same determination that had carried her from her humble beginnings in South Chicago to this prestigious university on a full scholarship. She didn't notice the tall figure rounding the corner until they collided, sending her sketches scattering across the brick pathway like autumn leaves. "I'm so sorry," a deep voice apologized, as strong hands steadied her shoulders, preventing her fall. Alicia looked up, the words of frustration dying on her lips as she met the most magnetic pair of hazel eyes she'd ever seen. The man before her was breathtaking, tall with broad shoulders, dark wavy hair swept casually back, and a smile that made her heart skip not just one beat, but several. "It's fine," she managed, kneeling to gather her sketches, suddenly conscious of her racing pulse. "I wasn't looking where I was going." He crouched beside her, helping collect the papers with careful hands. "These are incredible," he said, examining a charcoal study of hands intertwined in what appeared to be both passion and tenderness. "You're the artist?" Alicia nodded, suddenly self-conscious under his admiring gaze. "They're just preliminary sketches for my showcase tonight." "Just sketches?" He raised an eyebrow, handing her the last drawing. "I'd call them masterpieces." He extended his hand. "Rick Richardson, second-year medical student and apparently your newest fan, Alicia Call." Their hands touched, and the jolt of electricity between them was unmistakable. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition of the same connection she felt. "Can I see the rest of your work tonight? At the showcase?" Rick asked, not releasing her hand. Alicia smiled, surprised by her own boldness. "Only if you promise to give me your honest opinion." "Deal." His thumb traced a small circle on her palm before letting go. "I'll see you tonight, Alicia Call." She watched him walk away, her heart racing with an unfamiliar excitement. Little did she know that this chance encounter would change the course of her life forever. The showcase buzzed with faculty and students admiring artwork displayed under strategic lighting. Alicia stood beside her canvas, a striking depiction of a woman emerging from shadows into brilliant light, her face turned toward an unseen horizon. The piece had already generated interest from several professors, but Alicia found herself continually glancing toward the entrance. "Looking for someone?" Her roommate Jasmine nudged her playfully. "No," Alicia lied, then confessed. "Maybe. Just someone I met today who said he might come." Would this someone happen to be tall, impossibly handsome, and walking this way right now? Jasmine whispered, slipping away with a knowing smile. Alicia turned to find Rick moving purposefully through the crowd toward her. He'd changed into a tailored navy blazer that accentuated his athletic build and carried a single red rose. Several female students tracked his movement with obvious interest, but his eyes never left Alicia. "You came," she said softly when he reached her. "I promised, didn't I?" Rick handed her the rose, their fingers brushing, and I wanted to see if the artist was as captivating as her work. Heat bloomed in Alicia's cheeks. "And your verdict?" "The art is extraordinary," he said, studying her painting with genuine appreciation. "But the artist—" His gaze returned to her face, lingering on her lips before meeting her eyes. "The artist outshines everything in this room." For 3 hours they remained side by side, discussing art, medicine, and life dreams. When the showcase ended, neither wanted the evening to end. "There's an all-night cafe just off campus," Rick suggested. "Best coffee and chocolate cake in town." Under the cafe's warm lights, they shared pieces of themselves rarely revealed to others. Alicia told him about growing up with her grandmother after losing both parents, about working 3 jobs to save for art supplies, about the teacher who'd recognized her talent and helped her apply for scholarships. Rick shared his passion for medicine, born when his younger brother had been saved by a brilliant surgeon after a car accident. "I want to help bring life into the world," he explained, eyes bright with conviction, "to be there for the most important moments in people's lives." "That's beautiful," Alicia said, touched by his passion. "My family expects me to join my father's cardiology practice," he admitted. "They've had my life planned since birth, the right schools, the right specialty, the right connections." He looked at her intently. "Meeting you today felt like the first unplanned real thing that's happened to me in years." The cafe closed at dawn, and Rick walked Alicia back to her dormitory, their hands finding each other in the gentle morning light. "Can I see you again?" he asked, standing closer than propriety suggested. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't," Alicia replied, her usual caution dissolved by something more powerful than common sense. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. Instead, Alicia rose on her toes, meeting him halfway. Their first kiss was tentative, a question being asked and answered. The second was not. Rick's arm circled her waist, drawing her against him as their lips met with growing hunger. Alicia's fingers slid into his hair, holding him to her as the world fell away. When they finally parted, both breathless, Rick pressed his forehead against hers. "I've never felt this way," he whispered, "like I've found something I didn't even know I was missing." Alicia closed her eyes, savoring his words and the feeling of rightness in his arms. Me neither. Over the next 6 months, Alicia and Rick became inseparable. Spring blossomed into summer, and with it, their love grew into something neither had experienced before. Weekends were spent in Rick's off-campus apartment, where they made love with an intensity that left them both transformed, lying tangled in sheets as they planned a future together. "After my residency, we could move wherever you want," Rick promised one lazy Sunday afternoon, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Paris for your art, New York, anywhere." Alicia rolled over to face him, her dark eyes serious. "I don't care where we are, as long as we're together." "Always," he vowed, capturing her lips in a kiss that quickly reignited their passion. Their relationship wasn't without challenges. Rick's study schedule was brutal, and Alicia's art demanded long hours in the studio, but they made every moment count, leaving notes in each other's books, meeting for quick lunches between classes, falling asleep on phone calls when distance separated them. Rick's wealthy family remained an abstraction, names mentioned in stories but never introduced. When Alicia gently inquired about meeting them, Rick always had plausible reasons to delay: his father's busy surgical schedule, his mother's charity commitments, an upcoming better time. Autumn arrived with crisp air and falling leaves. One evening, Rick took Alicia to the lakefront, where they'd had their third date. With the water gleaming silver in the moonlight, he presented her with a delicate silver necklace bearing a small paintbrush charm. "It's beautiful," Alicia whispered as he fastened it around her neck. "Not as beautiful as you," Rick said, pulling her into a deep kiss that left her breathless. "I love you, Alicia, more than I thought possible." "I love you too," she replied, believing with all her heart that their love was unbreakable. 2 days later, everything shattered. Rick called, his voice strained. "We need to talk. Can you meet me at the coffee shop in an hour?" Something in his tone sent ice through Alicia's veins. "Is everything okay?" "Just meet me, please." The cafe, where they'd spent their first night talking until dawn, now felt cold and foreign. Rick sat at a corner table, his face unreadable, an untouched coffee before him. "What's wrong?" Alicia asked, sliding into the seat across from him. Rick couldn't meet her eyes. "My parents found out about us." And they made it very clear what would happen if I continued seeing you." His voice had a hollow quality she'd never heard before. They'll cut me off completely. Tuition, housing, everything. Alicia reached for his hand. We can figure this out. I can take more shifts at the gallery. You could get loans. Rick pulled his hand away. You don't understand. It's not just the money. It's my entire future, the connections, the residency spots they've arranged. Without their support, everything I've worked for falls apart. So what are you saying? Alicia's heart hammered painfully against her ribs. Finally he looked at her, his eyes devoid of the warmth she'd come to rely on. I'm saying we need to end this now, before it goes any further. Just like that, after everything we've shared? Tears threatened, but pride kept them at bay. Don't I matter to you at all? Something flickered in his expression, pain, regret, but it hardened almost. Immediately. My parents are right. We come from different worlds, Alicia. This was never going to work long term. You're not... He hesitated, then delivered the final blow. You're not good enough for my world. The words struck her like physical blows. Alicia sat frozen, unable to reconcile the loving man she knew with this cold stranger before her. I see. She stood slowly, dignity somehow intact despite the earthquake devastating her inside. Her fingers found the necklace at her throat, and, for a moment, she considered removing it, throwing it at him. Instead, she left it where it was, a reminder of what she'd foolishly believed was real. Goodbye, Rick. She walked out of the cafe into the rain that had begun to fall, matching the tears now streaming down her face. Behind her, unseen, Rick's carefully constructed facade crumbled. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent grief for the love he'd just destroyed and the life he'd chosen instead. That night, Alicia packed everything she owned. By morning, she had withdrawn from the university and disappeared, leaving no forwarding address. She would rebuild somewhere new, somewhere without memories of Rick Richardson around every corner. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that 3 days after their breakup, Rick would go looking for her, sick with regret and determined to choose love over family approval. He would find her apartment empty, her phone disconnected, her friends sworn to secrecy, and so began 2 years of separation, 2 hearts broken by choices made and unmade, 2 lives moving in separate orbits but forever altered by the gravity of what they'd shared. Chapter 2. Betrayal's Sting. The Richardson family estate sprawled across 5 acres of manicured perfection, a monument to old money and careful curation. Inside the mahogany-paneled study, Rick stood before his parents, fists clenched at his sides as his father's words hung in the air between them like poison. "You will end this inappropriate relationship immediately," Edward Richardson demanded, swirling amber liquid in a crystal tumbler that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "The girl is nobody, Rick. A scholarship charity case. What could she possibly offer someone with your future?" "Her name is Alicia," Rick replied, his voice tight with controlled fury, "and she offers me happiness. Something I've never found in your world of cocktail parties, empty social climbing, and hospital board meetings." His mother, Eleanor, sighed dramatically from her perch on the Italian leather sofa, pearls gleaming at her throat. "Darling, we're not monsters. Young men have their diversions. But you're a Richardson. You have responsibilities to this family, to the legacy we've built across generations." "A legacy of what?" Rick challenged. "Of marrying for social advantage? Of putting appearances above everything else?" Edward slammed his glass down. "Enough! I've already spoken with Dean Harrington. Either this relationship ends or your medical career does." His voice softened to something more dangerous. "You think you can support yourself without our connections, without our influence? The Richardsons' name opens doors that would remain forever closed to someone like her. We've indulged your..." Rebellion long enough, Eleanor added. The Anderson girl has been asking about you. Her father sits on the hospital board, as you well know. She's from the right sort of family. Appropriate. Rick felt the walls closing in, years of conditioning, warring with the love he felt for Alicia. I need time to think. There's nothing to think about, his father said coldly. End it by week's end, or consider yourself cut off, completely. The rain lashed against the windows of Rick's apartment as he stared at the photograph in his hands. Alicia, laughing, her face turned toward the sun during their weekend at the lake. How could he give her up? How could he choose family obligation over the only real love he'd ever known? Yet how could he throw away everything he'd worked for? Without his family's support, his medical career would derail before it truly began. No prestigious residency, no connections, no financial stability to offer Alicia or anyone else. When he called her to meet, he still hadn't decided. Perhaps they could find another way, perhaps. But sitting across from her in that cafe, seeing the hope and love in her eyes, something inside him hardened. The Richardson in him, calculating, pragmatic, self-serving, took control. You're not good enough for my world. The words tasted like poison as he spoke them, a lie so profound it made him physically ill. But he watched them hit their mark, watched the light die in Alicia's beautiful eyes, and he didn't take them back. He let her walk away into the rain, convincing himself it was for the best. 3 days of sleepless agony followed, 3 days of replaying her expression, of feeling the physical absence of her as though someone had amputated a limb. On the 4th morning, he woke with sudden clarity. He'd made the worst mistake of his life. No career, no family fortune was worth losing Alicia. He would find her, beg forgiveness, accept whatever consequences came. If his parents disowned him, so be it. They'd find a way together, but she was gone. Her apartment cleared out, her phone disconnected. Her roommate Jasmine slammed the door in his face. You destroyed her, were her only words. Don't come back. For weeks, he searched desperately. He skipped classes, called every gallery and art studio in the city, drove to neighboring towns. On the flimsiest rumors of her whereabouts, nothing. Alicia Cole had vanished as though she'd never existed. The only proof she hadn't been a dream was the sketch she'd made of him sleeping, which he'd found tucked between books on his shelf, and the hollow ache in his chest that never subsided. Mr. Richardson, your father is on line 1, his secretary's voice interrupted Rick's thoughts. 2 years had passed. Rick had buried himself in his studies, graduated with honors, and begun his residency in obstetrics. He'd done everything expected of him, moved mechanically through the motions of the life planned for him. Tell him I'm with a patient, Rick replied automatically. His office walls were decorated with diplomas and awards, tokens of professional success that meant nothing. In his desk drawer, hidden beneath medical journals, lay Alicia's sketch, now, creased and worn from handling. Every achievement felt hollow without her to share it. He'd dated casually, always women his parents approved of, but none lasted more than a few weeks. How could they compare to what he'd destroyed? He still searched. For her, private investigators had followed dead-end leads across 3 states. Social media searches yielded nothing. Alicia had always been private, reluctant to leave digital footprints. His latest investigator suggested she might have even changed her name. At night, alone in his luxury apartment, Rick would sometimes take out the sketch and whisper apologies to a woman who couldn't hear them. Hundreds of miles away, Alicia fastened a delicate silver chain around her neck, carefully tucking the paintbrush pendant beneath her blouse before leaving her small apartment. 2 years in this new city had gradually rebuilt something resembling a life. Her job at East Side Gallery paid the bills, and her own artwork had begun to attract local attention. Small victories in a life reconstructed from ruins. Morning, beautiful, Leonard Green's voice greeted her as she locked her door. Tall, conventionally handsome in a forgettable way, he stood holding coffee and a bakery bag. Thought you might need breakfast before your big day. Alicia accepted the coffee with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thanks, that's sweet of you. Leonard was sweet, reliable, safe. They'd been dating for 4 months after meeting at one of her small exhibitions. He was everything Rick wasn't: straightforward, transparent, unencumbered by family drama. He made no demands on her heart, which was fortunate since she'd locked that away long ago. "Nervous about the showing tonight?" he asked as they walked toward the gallery. "A little," she admitted. "The gallery owner from Phoenix will be there. If he likes my work, it could mean a much bigger exhibition." Leonard squeezed her hand. "He'll love it. Everyone loves your work." His encouragement was sincere, but lacked understanding of her art. The pain and longing embedded in every brushstroke, the memories transmuted into color and form. Leonard saw the beauty of her paintings, but never the depth, never the heartbreak beneath. At her studio that afternoon, Alicia stood before her newest piece. A man turned away, his silhouette melting into shadows while reaching toward an unseen light. Despite herself, she'd given him Rick's profile. "Still haunting me," she whispered, touching the hidden pendant at her throat. 2 years, and she still couldn't fully exorcise him from her heart. Her phone chimed with a message from Leonard. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that red dress I like." Alicia smiled faintly. Leonard was good to her, patient with her emotional walls. He never pushed for more than she offered, content with the pieces of herself she was willing to share. If their relationship lacked the consuming fire she'd known with Rick, perhaps that was blessing rather than curse. Fire, after all, destroyed as often as it illuminated. That evening, as Leonard escorted her through the crowded gallery, his hand possessively at the small of her back, Alicia caught a glimpse of a tall man with dark wavy hair near her exhibition. Her heart lurched painfully before the man turned, revealing a stranger's face. "You okay?" Leonard asked, noticing her sudden tension. "Fine," she lied smoothly, a skill perfected over 2 years of pretending. "Just nervous." Later, after the Phoenix, gallery owner had expressed serious interest in her work, and Leonard had taken her to dinner to celebrate. They returned to her apartment. His kisses were pleasant, his touch gentle as they moved to her bedroom. Alicia closed her eyes, surrendering to physical comfort while keeping the deepest part of herself locked away. In the aftermath, Leonard slept peacefully beside her. Alicia slipped from bed and stood by the window, her fingers finding the pendant she never removed. "It's enough," she whispered to herself, a mantra repeated through countless nights. "It has to be enough." But in her dreams, it was always Rick's arms that held her, Rick's voice whispering love against her skin, Rick's promises of forever that had proven as insubstantial as morning mist. And each morning she woke with the same hollow ache, wondering if she would ever truly be whole again. Chapter 3. Life-changing moments. The morning sickness caught Alicia by surprise, sending her rushing to the bathroom for the 3rd consecutive day. Kneeling on the cold tile floor, she pressed her forehead against the porcelain and tried to remember when she'd last had her period. 4 weeks? 6? Between preparing for her upcoming exhibition and Leonard's increasingly demanding presence. In her life, she'd lost track of time, focused on rebuilding after Rick's betrayal. "No," she whispered, a sudden realization dawning as she counted backward on shaking fingers. "It can't be." But the drugstore test an hour later confirmed what her body already knew. 2 pink lines, unmistakable and life-altering. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind as she sat on the edge of her bathtub, the plastic test trembling in her hands, her future transforming in an instant. Leonard had left for a business trip to Chicago yesterday, promising to call tonight. Their relationship had stabilized into something comfortable, if not passionate. Dinners twice a week, occasional weekends together, no declarations of undying love, but a reliable companionship that had begun to fill some of the emptiness in her life. Would a baby change that? Would Leonard step up, become the partner and father her child would need? Alicia's hand drifted to her still flat stomach. Despite the fear and uncertainty swirling through her, something else stirred, a fierce, protective love for this tiny being now growing inside her. Whatever happened with Leonard, she already knew she would keep this baby. Pregnant. Leonard's voice crackled through the phone, disbelief evident even across the digital connection. "Are you sure?" "3 tests, sure," Alicia replied, trying to gauge his reaction from the heavy silence that followed. "This is," he finally said, "unexpected. We've been careful. Not careful enough, apparently." She took a deep breath. "Leonard, I know this isn't what either of us planned, but what are you going to do about it?" He interrupted, his tone suddenly businesslike. The question hung between them, its implications clear. Alicia's hand instinctively moved to her abdomen, protective. "I'm keeping the baby," she said firmly. Another long pause. "Alicia, be reasonable. We've only been together a few months. I'm not ready to be anyone's father. My career is just taking off and you have your art. I'm not asking you to be involved," she said, surprised by her own calm. "I'm simply telling you what I've decided. Look, I'll be back tomorrow. We can discuss this rationally then. There are options, clinics that—" "There's nothing to discuss," Alicia cut him off. "I've made my decision." When she ended the call, tears blurred her vision. Not for Leonard's reaction, which she'd half expected, but for the sudden clarity of her situation. She was truly alone now, facing single motherhood in a city where her support system consisted of a handful of casual friendships from the gallery and art classes. For one weak moment, Rick's face flashed in her mind. The way he'd looked when talking about becoming a doctor, his passion for bringing new life into the world. What would he think of her situation now? Would he have reacted like Leonard, seeing her pregnancy as a problem to be solved rather than a life to be cherished? Alicia shook the thought away. Rick Richardson belonged to her past. This baby represented her future. Leonard returned from Chicago with a bouquet of roses and a carefully rehearsed speech about timing and responsibility. Alicia invited him up to her apartment, accepted the flowers without comment, and listened as he outlined all the reasons why this pregnancy was a mistake. "We could have a good thing, you and I," he concluded, reaching for her hand across the kitchen table. "But a baby changes everything. I'm not ready for that kind of commitment." "I'm not asking for a commitment, Leonard." His expression softened, with what looked like relief. "So you'll take care of it?" "I'll go with you, of course. Pay for everything." Alicia pulled her hand away. "That's not what I meant. I'm keeping this baby. What I meant was that I'm not asking for your commitment. You're free to walk away. You can't be serious." Leonard stood, pacing the small kitchen. "You're really going to throw away everything, your career, your freedom, for an unplanned pregnancy? Be reasonable, Alicia. This baby isn't a mistake to me," she said quietly. "If it is to you, then you should go." His face hardened. "You're trying to trap me, is that it? You think a baby will make me propose, move in together, play happy families?" The accusation stung, but Alicia maintained her composure. "I don't want anything from you, Leonard. Not money, not a ring, not your name on the birth certificate. I'm perfectly capable of raising this child on my own." "Fine." He grabbed his coat. "When you come to your senses, call me. Until then, don't expect me to play along with this emotional blackmail." The door slammed behind him, the sound echoing through her apartment like finality. Alicia should have felt devastated, abandoned again by someone she'd let into her life. Instead, an odd sense of relief washed over her. Leonard's true character had revealed itself, saving her from investing more of herself in someone who would never truly understand her heart. She placed a hand on her stomach. "It's just you and me now, little one. We'll be okay." 2 weeks later, Alicia sat in her doctor's waiting room, flipping through a parenting magazine without really seeing the pages. Dr. Reynolds had been her physician since she moved to this city, but at her last appointment, she'd recommended Alicia see an obstetrician for proper prenatal care. Alicia, call! A nurse appeared at the doorway. Dr. Walker had an emergency delivery. Dr. Richardson will see you instead. The magazine slipped from Alicia's suddenly numb fingers. I'm sorry, what did you say? Dr. Richardson, the nurse repeated. He's new to the practice, but excellent. If you'd prefer to reschedule with Dr. Walker. No, Alicia said mechanically, her mind racing. Richardson was a common enough name. It couldn't possibly be. But as she followed the nurse down the hallway, her heart hammered against her ribs. The universe couldn't be this cruel, this ironic. Surely fate wouldn't place her, pregnant and vulnerable, in the hands of the man who had broken her so completely. The examination room was cool and clinical, the paper gown rustling as she perched on the edge of the table. Breathe, she told herself. It's not him. It can't be him. When the door opened, time seemed to stop. Rick Richardson stood frozen in the doorway, white coat and stethoscope, lending him an air of authority that did nothing to mask the shock transforming his features. He looked exactly the same, yet completely different. The boyish charm hardened into a man's confident features, eyes that had once looked at her with tenderness, now widening in disbelief. Alicia, he whispered, the chart in his hands forgotten. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Every carefully constructed wall, every defense she'd built against this very moment, threatened to crumble under the weight of his presence. I'll get another doctor, he said hoarsely, starting to back out of the room. No, Alicia found her voice, surprising herself with its steadiness. That's not necessary, Dr. Richardson. The formality felt like armor, something to shield her. From the tide of emotions threatening to drown her, Rick stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. His professional mask slipped into place, though his eyes never left her face. I see from your chart you're approximately 8 weeks pregnant. Congratulations. The word hung between them, loaded with unspoken questions. Alicia nodded stiffly, one hand unconsciously moving to her stomach, a protective gesture that didn't escape Rick's notice. Is the father involved? He asked, the question clearly personal rather than medical. No, Alicia replied, her chin lifting slightly. This baby is mine alone. Something flickered across Rick's face. Relief, regret. He moved closer, still maintaining professional distance, but near enough that she could detect the faint scent of his cologne, heartbreakingly familiar after all this time. I've been looking for you, he said quietly, abandoning all pretense of a normal doctor-patient interaction. For 2 years, Alicia, private investigators, social media searches, everything I could think of. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it, vulnerable and raw. Because I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go. His voice cracked slightly. 3 days after I said those unforgivable things to you, I came looking for you, to beg forgiveness, to tell you I'd choose you over everything else. But you were gone. Alicia closed her eyes briefly, the timing of it all a cruel joke. 3 days. If she'd waited just 3 days. It doesn't matter now, she said, reopening her eyes. That was a lifetime ago. I have a new life now. A baby. On the way. It matters to me, Rick insisted, taking another step closer. Seeing you again, it's like finding something precious I thought was lost forever. I'm not lost, Rick. I'm not yours to find. She met his gaze directly. Now, can we please proceed with the examination, or should I request another doctor? The professional mask slipped back into place, though pain lingered in his eyes. Of course. I apologize for overstepping. As Rick began the routine questions and checks, his touch clinically detached yet impossibly gentle, Alicia fought to keep her emotions contained, every brush of his fingers on her wrist taking her pulse, every soft instruction to breathe deeply. As he listened to her heart, sent tremors of memory through her body. When the examination ended, Rick handed her a printout of prenatal vitamins and recommendations. Their fingers brushed briefly, and the contact sent an electric current through them both. "Alicia," he said softly, standing too close yet not close enough. "Please don't disappear again. At least let me be your doctor, if nothing else. Let me take care of you and your baby." She should refuse. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at her to run, to find another doctor, another clinic, perhaps even another city. Yet something deeper, something she thought had died 2 years ago in a rain-soaked cafe, stirred in response to the plea in his eyes. "Fine," she found herself saying, "but this is strictly professional, Rick. My baby and I are a package deal now. There's no going back to the past." Relief washed across his features. "Thank you. I won't let you down. Not again." As Alicia gathered her things to leave, the pendant at her throat caught the light, drawing Rick's attention. His breath caught visibly when he recognized the paintbrush charm he'd given her so long ago. "You kept it," he whispered, wonder and hope mingling in his voice. Alicia touched the necklace briefly. "Some things are hard to let go of, even when we know we should." She walked out of the examination room without looking back, her heart racing with the certainty that her carefully reconstructed life had just been upended once again. Behind her, Rick Richardson watched her go. A second chance he'd never dared. Hope for suddenly, improbably, within reach. Chapter 4. Fate's Reunion. Alicia leaned against her apartment door after closing it, heart racing as if she'd run for miles. Seeing Rick again had shattered the fragile peace she'd constructed over 2 years. His face, his voice, his scent, everything about him remained achingly familiar, as though the time apart had been mere days instead of years. "This can't be happening," she whispered to the empty room. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown. "Number, can we talk, please?" Rick. How had he gotten her number, of course? Her patient file? She should report him for the breach of privacy, but instead found herself staring at the message, thumb hovering over the reply button. Another text arrived. "I understand if you don't want to, but I've spent 2 years regretting the worst mistake of my life. Just coffee, that's all I'm asking." Alicia closed her eyes, conflicting emotions battling within her. The sensible choice was clear: block his number, find another doctor, protect herself from inevitable heartbreak. Yet beneath her anger and fear pulsed something dangerous. Hope. 1 coffee, tomorrow at 2 p.m., the place on Highland Ave. Nothing more. She sent the message before she could change her mind, then immediately regretted it. What was she doing? Hadn't she learned her lesson? But the thought of seeing him again, of hearing his explanation, proved irresistible despite the warning bells clanging in her mind. The cafe buzzed with afternoon patrons when Alicia arrived, the crowd providing a welcome buffer of noise and anonymity. She spotted Rick immediately, seated at a corner table, nervously turning a ceramic cup between his surgeon's hands, looking up with barely concealed hope each time the door chimed. When he saw her, the naked longing that transformed his face nearly made her turn and flee. "You came," he said when she reached the table, half rising before awkwardly sitting back down, as if unsure of the proper protocol for reuniting with someone whose heart you'd shattered. "I said I would." Alicia slid into the chair across from him, deliberately keeping her coat on, a small but unmistakable signal that she wouldn't stay long, wouldn't get comfortable. Rick pushed a steaming cup toward her. "Hazelnut latte with an extra shot, and light foam, still your favorite?" The fact that he remembered such intimate details after 2 years of separation unsettled her deeply. "Thank you," she murmured, reluctantly warming to the thoughtfulness. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Rick spoke. "I've rehearsed what I would say if I ever found you again. Now that you're here, nothing seems adequate. Why don't you start with why?" Alicia suggested, her voice steadier than she felt. "Why did you say those things? Why did you choose them over us?" Rick's hands tightened around his cup. Fear, cowardice, 22 years of conditioning. That family approval meant everything. His eyes, filled with regret, met hers. 3 days after I let you walk away, I realized I'd made an unforgivable mistake. I went to your apartment, but you were gone. No forwarding address, no way to find you. So what changed in those 3 days? Skepticism edged her voice. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The thought of life without you was unbearable. He swallowed hard. I went to my parents and told them I chose you, regardless of consequences. They disowned me, as promised. Alicia's eyes widened. They disowned you? But your medical career, your residency, I took out loans, worked night shifts at the emergency room, lost my apartment, lived in a studio the size of a closet. A faint smile crossed his face. Best decision I ever made, even though I lost you anyway. You expect me to believe you threw everything away for me 3 days too late. The words came out sharper than intended. I don't expect you to believe anything, but it's the truth. Rick reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. I've spent 2 years looking for you, Alicia. Private investigators, social, media searches, reaching out to mutual acquaintances. Nothing. It's like you vanished. I needed to disappear, she said quietly. You destroyed me, Rick. Pain flashed across his features. I know. What I said to you, there's no excuse. None. I've regretted those words every day since. Yet you said them. You looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't good enough. I lied, he whispered. I thought I was choosing the right path, the responsible one. I was wrong. He looked down at his hands. When I saw you yesterday in my examination room, it felt like the universe giving me a second chance I don't deserve. Alicia took a sip of her latte, buying time. The raw honesty in his voice chipped at her defenses, but 2 years of pain couldn't be erased by a single conversation. I have a life now, Rick. A baby on the way. I can't just pretend the past didn't happen because fate threw us together again. I'm not asking you to. He leaned forward. Let me be your doctor. Let me take care of you and your baby. No pressure, no expectations, just the best medical care I can provide. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision. His voice roughened. But please don't disappear again. I couldn't bear losing you a second time. The sincerity in his eyes made something twist painfully in Alicia's chest. Despite everything, despite the walls she'd built, part of her still responded to him in ways she'd never felt with Leonard or anyone else. I need time to think, she said finally. Rick nodded, relief evident in his expression. Of course. Whatever. You need. As Alicia rose to leave, he asked softly, The baby's father, is he in the picture? She hesitated, then answered honestly, No. When I told him I was keeping the baby, he walked away. Anger flashed in Rick's eyes before he controlled it. His loss, he said simply. Outside the cafe, Alicia took a deep breath of cold air, trying to steady her racing thoughts. Seeing Rick again had unearthed feelings she'd thought safely buried. His story of regret and searching rang true. But could she trust him again? Could she risk her heart, and now her child's future, on a man who had broken her once before? The following week, Alicia sat in Dr. Walker's waiting room, having decided to switch doctors. Professional ethics aside, seeing Rick regularly throughout. Her pregnancy would be emotional torture. Ms. Call, the receptionist called. Dr. Walker had to leave for emergency surgery. Dr. Richardson is available if you'd prefer not to reschedule. Alicia hesitated. I was actually hoping to transfer to Dr. Walker permanently. The receptionist looked apologetic. Dr. Walker isn't accepting new regular patients at the moment. Her schedule is completely full through the next 6 months. Perfect. Timing as always. Alicia weighed her options. Wait weeks for an appointment with another obstetrician or see Rick again. The baby's needs had to come first. I'll see Dr. Richardson, she said reluctantly. This time she was prepared for his presence, yet the impact of seeing him again, white coat open over a blue shirt that matched his eyes, stethoscope around. His neck still hit her with unexpected force. "Thank you for seeing me," she said formally. Rick maintained professional distance, though his eyes softened. "Of course. How have you been feeling?" As he conducted the examination, his touch remained, clinically appropriate yet somehow tender. He explained each step, each measurement, each test he recommended, with a clarity that put Alicia at ease despite herself. "Everything looks perfect," he said finally, helping her sit up. "The baby's developing right on schedule." "Thank you," Alicia said, gathering her purse. "Alicia," Rick said hesitantly, "I understand your caution, but I want you to know that as your doctor, your well-being and your baby's will always be my highest priority, regardless of our past." She studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or manipulation. Finding none, she made a decision she hoped wouldn't prove foolish. "All right, you can be my doctor, Rick, but that's all. Our relationship stays professional." The smile that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "Thank you for trusting me with this. I won't let you down." As she left the clinic, Alicia felt both unease and strange comfort. Part of her recognized the danger of allowing Rick back into her life in any capacity. Yet another part, the part that still wore his necklace, that still dreamt of his touch, whispered that perhaps fate had brought them together for a reason. She placed a protective hand over her stomach. "What do you think, little one? Am I making a terrible mistake?" The answering flutter, her baby's first movements, felt like both warning and blessing. Chapter 5. Rekindled Flames. The weeks that followed established a careful rhythm between them. Twice monthly, Alicia visited the clinic for prenatal appointments, each time lying to herself that the flutter in her stomach was solely her baby's movements, not the unmistakable anticipation at seeing Rick again. Each time, his professional demeanor would soften briefly when their eyes met across the examination room, before he quickly resumed the role of attentive physician rather than former lover. After her fourth visit, Alicia emerged from the clinic to find Seattle's infamous rain falling in relentless sheets, her umbrella forgotten on her apartment's coat rack. She huddled beneath the building's inadequate awning, contemplating the long, miserable walk to the bus stop in her increasingly pregnant state. "Need a ride?" Rick's voice came from behind her, startling her with its proximity. She turned to find him holding a large black umbrella, his white doctor's coat exchanged for a charcoal sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength she remembered all too well. "I was going to call a cab," she replied, trying to ignore how the rain had dampened his hair, making it curl slightly at his temples. "Seems wasteful when I'm heading in your direction," he said casually. Alicia raised an eyebrow. "You don't know where I live. Elmwood Apartments on Westview Drive," he replied, then flushed at her surprised expression. "It's in your file, doctor-patient confidentiality and all that." She should refuse. Maintaining professional boundaries meant not sitting in close quarters in his car, not prolonging contact beyond necessary medical interactions. But the rain was coming down harder, and the thought of waiting for a cab held little appeal. "All right. Thank you." Inside his car, the subtle scent of his cologne filled the confined space. Alicia settled into the passenger seat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he pulled into traffic. They drove in silence for several minutes, windshield wipers marking time between them. "How are you feeling?" Rick finally asked. "Beyond what you tell me during appointments." "Tired, nervous, excited?" Alicia gazed out the rain-streaked window. "Sometimes all three at once." "That's normal," he assured her. "Are you sleeping okay?" "When the baby isn't doing gymnastics at 3 a.m. Rick smiled. "Active little one. Takes after." Alicia caught herself before saying, "Its father." Leonard wasn't this baby's father in any way that mattered. "Takes after me, I guess. My grandmother always said I never stopped moving as a child. I remember," Rick said softly. "You told me once, said your grandmother called you her perpetual motion machine." The fact that he remembered such a small detail from their past conversations made something twist in Alicia's chest. After 2 years, after everything that had happened, how could he still recall something so inconsequential? Thunder rumbled overhead as the rain intensified. Rick slowed the car, peering through the downpour. "This is getting dangerous. Mind if we wait it out a bit? There's a diner just ahead." The sensible answer was to continue home, but the storm's ferocity made the diner seem the safer option. "That's fine." They dashed from the car to the entrance, sharing Rick's umbrella, yet still getting soaked. Inside, the diner was warm and nearly empty, smelling of coffee and grilled cheese. They slid into a booth by the window, watching water cascade down the glass. "Just like that night in college," Rick said quietly. "Remember? We got caught in the storm walking back from the movies." Alicia remembered all too well how they'd taken shelter in a 24-hour cafe, talking until dawn, his hand warming hers across the table. How the rain had become backdrop to their growing love, cocooning them in a world that existed only for two. "That was a long time ago," she said, focusing on the menu, though she wasn't hungry. The waitress brought coffee for Rick and herbal tea for Alicia. When she left, Rick leaned forward, eyes intent on Alicia's face. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Depends on the question. Do you ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't been such a fool? If I'd chosen you from the beginning?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. "That's not a road worth traveling, Rick. What happened, happened." "I think about it all the time," he admitted. "We'd probably be married by now. Maybe even expecting our first child together." Pain lanced through her at the vision of what might have been, a life she'd once dreamed of, now forever out of reach. "Don't, please." "I'm sorry." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "I promised myself I wouldn't pressure you. It's just seeing you again, knowing you're carrying a child that could have been, but isn't," she finished firmly. "This baby is mine, Rick, not yours, not Leonard's, mine." "I know." He reached across the table, hesitated, then placed his hand over hers. "And I think you're incredible, taking this on alone, so brave and strong." His touch sent warmth spiraling through her, awakening sensations she'd thought long buried. Alicia should pull away, maintain the boundaries she'd established, but found herself turning her hand until their palms met, fingers intertwining. "I'm terrified," she confessed in a whisper. "What if I can't do this? What if I'm not enough?" "You are enough," Rick said fiercely. "More than enough. And you don't have to do it alone." The implication hung between them, dangerous and tempting. Alicia withdrew her hand. "The rain's letting up. We should go." The drive to her apartment building passed in silence, the air between them charged with unspoken words. When Rick pulled up to the entrance, neither moved immediately. "Thank you for the ride," Alicia said finally. "Alicia." Rick's voice stopped her as she reached for the door handle. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Not as your doctor, just as me." Every instinct for self-preservation screamed refusal, yet some deeper part of her, the part that had never stopped loving him, whispered, "Yes." "I don't think that's a good idea," she said. even as her heart contradicted her words. "Probably not," he agreed with a sad smile, "but I had to ask." Something in his resigned acceptance prompted her to add, "Maybe another time, when things are less complicated." Hope flickered in his eyes. "I'll hold you to that." As Alicia climbed the stairs to her apartment, confusion and longing battled within her. The sensible choice was clear: maintain professional distance, protect her heart, focus on her baby. But the memory of Rick's hand holding hers, the sincerity in his eyes when he called her enough, these things followed her into night dreams where past and present blurred, and second chances weren't just fantasy. A week later, Alicia awakened to sharp pains in her abdomen. Fear gripped her as she curled around her growing belly, protective and panicked. When the pain didn't subside after an hour, she called the clinic's emergency line, heart pounding. Rick's voice answered, alert despite the late hour. "Alicia? What's wrong?" "Pain," she managed. "Sharp, not going away. Something's wrong with the baby." "I'm coming to get you," he said immediately. "Stay calm. 20 minutes tops." He arrived in 15, concern etched on his features as he helped her to his car. During the drive to the hospital, one hand remained on her arm, a steady anchor amid her fear. "It could be nothing serious," he assured her. "Cramping and discomfort are common in the second trimester, but we'll check everything to be sure." In the hospital, Rick guided her through intake with practiced efficiency. Though not officially on duty, he stayed beside her, his presence both professional and deeply personal as another doctor performed the examination. "Braxton Hicks contractions," the obstetrician announced finally. "False labor, common at this stage, though unusually strong in your case. Nothing to worry about, but we'll monitor you for a few hours to be safe." Relief washed over Alicia, tears spilling before she could control them. "The baby's okay?" "Perfectly fine," the doctor confirmed. "Strong heartbeat, good activity." After the doctor left, Rick sat beside Alicia's bed, taking her hand between both of his. "You had me worried," he admitted, voice rough with emotion. "I was so scared," Alicia whispered. "I thought I was losing the baby." "But you didn't. Everything's fine." His thumb traced circles on her palm, soothing. "You're not getting rid of me that easily." The words, meant lightly, carried deeper meaning that neither missed. Alicia studied his face, the fatigue around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the absolute focus with which he attended to her comfort. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "You could have sent an ambulance." "Yes, I did," he countered. There was no other option. When the monitors confirmed all was well, Rick drove Alicia home in the pre-dawn quiet. At her door, exhaustion and lingering adrenaline made her vulnerable. Would you stay? Just for a little while?" The request surprised them both. Rick nodded, following her inside. On her couch, with safe distance between them, Alicia finally asked the question that had haunted her for weeks. "Why are you doing all this, Rick? The middle of the night rescue, the extra care, all of it. Is it guilt, trying to make up for the past?" "Partly," he admitted, "but mostly because I never stopped loving you, Alicia. 2 years, countless dates, immersing myself in work. Nothing filled the space you left." The raw honesty in his voice shattered something inside her. "I can't do this again," she whispered, tears threatening. "I can't give you my heart just to have you break it a second time." "I won't." Rick moved closer, his hand finding hers. "I made a terrible mistake once. I've spent every day since trying to be worthy of a second chance I never thought I'd get." Their eyes held, the connection between them palpable in the quiet apartment. Rick leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. Instead, Alicia closed the distance, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt like coming home after years of wandering. His hands cradled her face with reverent gentleness, the kiss deepening with remembered passion and new tenderness. When they parted, breathless, Rick rested his forehead against hers. "I've missed you," he whispered, "every day, every hour." "I've missed you too," Alicia confessed, the admission both surrender and victory. "Even when I hated you for what you did, I missed you." As dawn painted her apartment with golden light, they remained close, talking softly of lost time and new beginnings, the future uncertain but suddenly full of possibility. Chapter 6. Trust's Tender Rebirth. Morning sunshine streamed through Alicia's apartment windows, painting golden stripes across the couch where two figures had talked through the night, until exhaustion claimed them briefly. Rick's arm rested lightly around her shoulders. Alicia's head nestled against his chest, her pregnancy-swollen feet propped on the coffee table amid scattered mugs and the remnants of their emotional confessions. "I should go," Rick said reluctantly, though his body made no move to separate from hers. "You need proper rest after last night's scare, doctor's orders." Alicia nodded but didn't pull away, unwilling to break this fragile connection. The night's vulnerability had forged something delicate between them. Not quite forgiveness, not fully trust, but a tentative bridge spanning the jagged chasm of their painful past. "This is complicated," she murmured, her fingers unconsciously tracing patterns on his forearm. "Professionally, ethically, emotionally. I know." Rick shifted to face her. "I can refer you to another obstetrician. Dr. Walker is excellent." "Then there's no conflict. Is that what you want?" "What I want," he said carefully, "is to be in your life however you'll allow, as your doctor, your friend, or, Alicia prompted when he hesitated, "or the man who loves you." His eyes held hers, unflinching. "The man who never stopped loving you, who would cherish you and your child if given the chance." His directness stole her breath. 2 years ago, she would have given anything to hear those words. Now, with her heart scarred and a baby on the way, the stakes were infinitely higher. "I need time, Rick. This is all happening so fast." "We have time," he assured her, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead before rising. "I've waited 2 years to find you again. I can wait as long as you need." After he left, Alicia moved slowly around her apartment, touching surfaces as if to ground herself in reality. Had she truly kissed Rick Richardson last night? Had she allowed herself to imagine a future that included him? Her phone chimed with a text message. "Just making sure you're resting. Call if you need anything. Anything at all." Warmth spread through her chest at his concern. It had been so long since anyone had truly cared for her welfare, not just what she could provide them. Even Leonard's attention had always felt conditional, a transaction rather than true affection. "I'm fine. Thank you for everything last night." His response came immediately. "It was my privilege. Dinner tomorrow? No pressure." Alicia hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. Agreeing meant acknowledging this shift between them, taking a step. Beyond the safe boundaries of doctor and patient. Yes, but somewhere quiet. "I'm not ready for the world to know, whatever this is." "I know just the place. 7 p.m.? Despite her misgivings, anticipation fluttered alongside her baby's movements as she replied, 7 p.m. Rick's quiet place turned out to be his apartment, a spacious loft with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city park. The aroma of homemade pasta sauce filled the space, candles flickering on a small table set for 2. "You cooked?" Alicia asked, surprised. "Don't sound so shocked." Rick took her coat, his fingers brushing her shoulders. "I've acquired a few skills in the past 2 years. Including cooking, the man who once burned microwave popcorn." He laughed, the sound warming her. "I had motivation to improve. Living alone without wealthy parents to bail you out is quite the education. As they ate, Rick shared stories of his time after their breakup, moving into a tiny studio apartment, learning to budget for the first time, taking extra shifts to pay for medical school while searching for her. My father called it my penance, he said, refilling her water glass. Said when I'd learned my lesson, I could come back to the family fold. Did you? Go back, I mean. Rick shook his head. Never. His condition was that I remain estranged from you. Even when I couldn't find you, I refused. It felt like betraying you a second time. That couldn't have been easy, Alicia murmured, imagining the privileged son of Edward Richardson struggling to make ends meet. Easiest decision I ever made, he countered. Hardest part was living with the knowledge I'd hurt you for nothing. For approval, I realized I never wanted or needed. After dinner, they settled on his couch, a careful distance between them. Rick showed her a shoebox full of detective reports, newspaper clippings with art exhibitions he'd thought might feature. Her work, printouts of social media searches. You really did look for me, Alicia said softly, touched by the physical evidence of his search. Everywhere. He hesitated, then reached for her hand. Alicia, I need to tell you something else, about that night. She tensed. Which night? When I ended things. My father didn't just threaten to cut me off. Rick's expression darkened. He threatened to destroy your scholarship, to ensure no art school would accept you. He has board connections everywhere. Shock rendered Alicia momentarily speechless. Why would he go to such lengths? Because he saw how serious we were. How in love. Rick's grip on her hand tightened. I thought I was protecting your future. By ending things. It wasn't until days later I realized we could have fought him together, found another way. The revelation shifted something fundamental in Alicia's understanding of their past. The betrayal remained, but its edges softened, knowing Rick had, in his misguided way, tried to protect her dreams. Why tell me this now? Because you deserve the whole truth, he said simply. And because I want no secrets between us if we're going to try again. The possibility hung between them, breathtaking and terrifying. Alicia placed her free hand on her rounded stomach, reminded of the most important consideration. This baby changes everything, Rick. If we did try again, you wouldn't just be getting me, you'd be accepting another man's child. Rick moved closer, his hand joining hers on her belly. This baby is part of you, he said fiercely, and I love every part of you, Alicia. I always have. The earnestness in his eyes undid her final defenses. Alicia leaned forward, meeting his lips with hers. Unlike their first kiss after reuniting, hesitant, exploratory, this one carried certainty. His arms encircled her, careful of her belly, drawing her into the harbor of his embrace. When they broke apart, tears glistened in Alicia's eyes. I'm still scared, she admitted. Trusting you again feels like jumping off a cliff. I'll catch you, Rick promised, every time, for as long as you'll let me. 3 weeks later, they developed a careful routine. Rick had referred Alicia to Dr. Walker, removing the ethical complication from their relationship. Most evenings found them together, rediscovering each other while navigating the new terrain of her pregnancy. One night, while Alicia dozed against his shoulder during a movie, Rick's phone rang. Seeing his father's name on the screen, he answered reluctantly. Richard, Edward Richardson's commanding voice, carried clearly enough that Alicia stirred. Your mother and I expect you at the hospital fundraiser Saturday. The Andersons will be there. Their daughter asks about you constantly. I've told you, Father, I'm not interested in Melissa Anderson or anyone else you choose for me. Rick's arm tightened protectively around Alicia. This childish rebellion has gone on long enough, his father snapped. It's time you remembered your responsibilities to this family. I have other priorities now, Rick said firmly. In fact, I'm seeing someone. Silence then. Not that scholarship girl again. Tell me you haven't been that foolish. Rick's jaw tightened. Her name is Alicia, and yes, we've reconnected. After everything we did to separate you, have you learned nothing? Fury vibrated through the phone. End it now, Richard, or face the consequences. I'll make one call to the hospital board. Try it, Rick interrupted, his voice deadly calm. Threaten my position, my career, whatever you like. It won't change anything. I love her, father. I'm building a life with her and her child. Her child? Edward's voice dripped with disdain. She's pregnant by another man, and you're willing to raise his bastard? Have you lost your mind? Alicia stiffened beside him, fully awake now and hearing every cruel word. Don't ever speak about Alicia or her baby that way again, Rick said, each word precise and cold. You lost the right to have any opinion about my life 2 years ago when you forced me to hurt the woman I love. I won't make that mistake twice. You choose her, you lose everything, Edward threatened. Your trust fund, your family connections, your inheritance, everything. I already chose her, Rick replied. Goodbye, father. He ended the call, tossing the phone aside before turning to Alicia with anguished eyes. I'm so sorry you had to hear that. Did you mean it? She asked quietly. About building a life with me and the baby? Every word. He cradled her face in his hands. You're my family now, Alicia. You and this child, if you'll have me. The remaining walls around Alicia's heart crumbled completely. 2 years of pain, of guarding herself against further hurt, dissolved in the certainty of Rick's love, a love strong enough to withstand family disapproval, financial hardship, and the complexities of their situation. I'll have you, she whispered, pulling him close. We'll have you. As his lips found hers, sealing their new beginning with tenderness and passion, Alicia felt her baby kick vigorously between them, as if offering its own approval of the man, who wasn't its father by blood, but had already claimed it with his heart. Chapter 7. Fighting for Love. Spring sunshine filtered through the curtains of Rick's loft, warming the sheets where Alicia lay curled against him. 2 months had passed since their reconciliation, her pregnancy now showing prominently at 6 months. Rick's hand rested protectively over her rounded belly, his face peaceful in sleep. Alicia watched him, still marveling at the twist of fate that had brought them back together. Despite her initial caution, their relationship had deepened with remarkable speed, as if their hearts, once reconnected, refused to allow further separation. You're staring, Rick murmured without opening his eyes, a smile playing at his lips. Just thinking how much has changed, she replied, tracing the contours of his face. 6 months ago I was alone, heartbroken again, with no idea how I'd manage. As a single mother, now. He opened his eyes, drawing her closer. Now I have you. The admission still felt vulnerable, a leap of faith each time she acknowledged the depth of her feelings. Rick kissed her softly. And you always will. The moment was interrupted by Rick's phone vibrating on the nightstand. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Hospital administration, he explained, answering reluctantly. Alicia watched his expression darken as he listened, tension gathering in his shoulders. I understand. I'll be there in an hour. He ended the call, jaw tight with suppressed anger. What's wrong? She asked, sitting up. My father. Rick ran a hand through his hair in frustration. He's made good on his threat. The hospital board is questioning my continued employment. Alarm shot through Alicia. Can they fire you because of us? Technically, no, but my father donated the entire East Wing. He has significant influence. Rick pulled her into his arms. Don't worry, I won't. Let him win, not this time. Rick, this is your career, everything you've worked for. You and this baby are what matter to me. His hand splayed across her belly, where a responsive kick met his palm. I'll fight for my position, because I've earned it. But I won't sacrifice us again. Never again. An hour later, Alicia stood at the window watching Rick drive away, anxiety gnawing at her. Edward Richardson's vindictiveness had already cost them 2 years. What else might he take? The hospital boardroom exuded wealth and power, dark wood paneling and leather chairs surrounding a massive table where 12 stern-faced administrators waited. Rick entered with his head high, refusing to be intimidated. "Dr. Richardson," the chief administrator began, "we've received some concerning reports about your professional conduct." "My professional conduct is exemplary," Rick replied calmly. "My patient outcomes are among the best in the department, and my ethical record is spotless." "Yet you were involved romantically with a patient," countered an older woman with steel-grey hair, Ms. Alicia Call. "I transferred Ms. Call to Dr. Walker immediately upon acknowledging our personal relationship," Rick stated. "There was no ethical breach." Edward Richardson sat at the far end, his contemptuous gaze fixed on his son. "The appearance of impropriety is enough to damage this hospital's reputation. My family has upheld certain standards for 3 generations. This isn't about hospital standards," Rick interrupted. "This is about your disapproval of my personal choices." Murmurs rippled around the table at his directness. The chief administrator cleared his throat awkwardly. "Dr. Richardson, your father has expressed concern about your judgment. He's suggested your position might be better filled by someone with more stability." "My father's attempting to control my personal life through my professional one," Rick said, addressing the entire board. "I've done nothing to warrant dismissal. My private relationship with a woman who is no longer my patient is not grounds for termination, and you all know it." He withdrew a folder from his briefcase. "I've taken the liberty of preparing copies of my performance reviews, patient satisfaction scores, and outcome statistics. I've also included the hospital bylaws regarding termination procedures, which require documented cause." As the board members reviewed the materials, Rick continued, "I understand my father's donations are important to this hospital, but if you allow personal vendettas to dictate professional decisions, what message does that send about this institution's integrity?" Edward's face flushed with fury. "This is outrageous. The girl is carrying another man's child. She's using you and you're too besotted to see it." "Her name is Alicia," Rick said evenly, refusing to be provoked. "She is a talented artist, a compassionate woman. And yes, she's carrying a child that I will love as my own. My personal life is not this board's concern unless it affects my work, which it does not." The chief administrator exchanged uncomfortable glances with his colleagues. "Perhaps we've been hasty. Dr. Richardson's record speaks for itself." Edward slammed his hand on the table. "I will withdraw every dollar of funding if you don't put an end to this." Silence fell as the board members absorbed the threat. Rick's heart pounded, but he maintained his composure. "That's your prerogative, Father, just as it's mine to choose who I love." After a tense deliberation, the board voted 9-3 to retain Rick's position, citing his exemplary record and the lack of legitimate cause for dismissal. Edward stormed from the room, pausing only to deliver a final blow. "You're no longer my son," he hissed. "Don't expect another penny from this family. Your trust fund is revoked, effective immediately." Rick watched him go, a complex mixture of grief and relief washing through him. The price of freedom from his father's control was high, but nowhere near the cost of losing Alicia again. When Rick returned to his apartment, he found Alicia pacing anxiously, her face lighting with hope when she saw him. "What happened?" He wrapped her in his arms, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I still have my job. The board sided with me. And your father has disowned me, officially this time." Rick led her to the couch, sitting beside her, with their hands intertwined. "He's cutting off my trust fund, removing me from the family will, the works." Alicia's eyes widened. "Rick, that's millions of dollars, your future security." I don't need his money. I have my skills, my education, my salary. He touched her cheek gently. Most importantly, I have you. Tears filled her eyes. I never wanted to come between you and your family. You didn't. My father's conditional love did that long ago. Rick kissed her softly. You've only ever asked me to be myself. Their moment of peace was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Rick opened it to find a face he hadn't seen in months. Leonard Green, looking both nervous and determined. I need to speak with Alicia, Leonard said without preamble. Rick's protective instincts flared. She doesn't want to see you. Let me decide that, Alicia said, coming to stand beside Rick. Her expression hardened, seeing the man who had abandoned her. What do you want, Leonard? Leonard shifted uncomfortably. Can we speak privately? Anything you have to say can be said in front of Rick. Leonard's eyes darted between them, recognition dawning. So this is why you wouldn't get rid of the baby? You already had a replacement lined up? Rick stepped forward, but Alicia placed a restraining hand on his arm. That's not what happened, and you know it. You left me when I needed you most. I made a mistake, Leonard admitted. I've had time to think. The baby, our baby, deserves both parents. This child stopped being our baby when you suggested I handle it, Alicia replied coldly. You made your choice. People change their minds, Leonard insisted. I'm willing to take responsibility now. We can try again, be a family. Rick remained silent, though tension radiated from him. This was Alicia's battle to fight, her decision to make. Despite his certainty in their love, a flicker of fear crept in. Would she consider giving her child a biological father? Alicia's hand sought Rick's, fingers intertwining in silent answer. My child already has a family, she said firmly. Rick has been there for every appointment, every midnight craving, every moment of fear and joy. He loves this baby already. Without reservation or condition, Leonard's expression hardened. You can't be serious. This guy, what does he bring to the table that I don't? Everything, Alicia said simply. Respect, unconditional love, the courage to choose what matters, most regardless of cost. You'll regret this, Leonard warned. When the romance fades and you're stuck with a man raising another man's child, that's enough, Rick interrupted, his voice dangerously calm. Alicia has made her decision. I suggest you respect it and leave. Leonard looked as if he might argue further, but something in Rick's expression made him reconsider. With a final, bitter glance at Alicia, he stalked out. When the door closed behind him, Alicia sagged against Rick, emotion overwhelming her. I can't believe he had the nerve to show up like that. Are you okay? Rick asked, guiding her to the couch. Better than okay. She looked up at him, eyes shining with certainty. Today, I watched you fight for us against your family. Then I got to fight for us too. Rick knelt before her, taking both her hands. There's something I've been wanting to ask you. After today, I can't wait any longer. Her breath caught as he reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. Inside nestled a delicate ring with a single perfect diamond, surrounded by smaller sapphires. It's not from the Richardson fortune, he said with a small smile. Just what I could afford on a doctor's salary. But the love it represents is worth more than any inheritance. Rick, she whispered, tears gathering. Alicia Cole, I've loved you since that first day on campus when you ran into me with your portfolio. I lost you once through my own stupidity, and I've been given a miracle in finding you again. His voice roughened with emotion. I want to spend every day proving I deserve that miracle. Will you marry me? Let me be a father to your child, a partner in your life, a keeper of your heart. Time seemed suspended as Alicia cupped his face in her hands, the answer shining in her eyes before she spoke it aloud. Yes, she breathed. Yes to all of it. As Rick slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a passionate kiss, Alicia felt the final pieces of her broken heart mend completely. They had weathered family rejection, professional threats, and the reappearance of the past, emerging stronger, more certain, their love tested and triumphant. That night, in the sanctuary of Rick's arms, Alicia dreamed not of what might have been, but of what would be. A future built on second chances and choices bravely made, a love story written not in straight lines, but in the beautiful, unexpected curves of redemption. Chapter 8. Labor of Love. "Are you sure about the lavender?" Alicia asked, rubbing her lower back as she surveyed the half-painted nursery. At 8 months pregnant, her movements had slowed, her belly prominent enough to make painting the far wall impossible. Rick stepped back to assess their work. There, soft lavender covered 2 walls, the others waiting for tomorrow's efforts. "I think it's perfect, soothing, gender-neutral, and it matches the mobile you made." The mobile hung from the ceiling, delicate paper butterflies and stars Alicia had crafted during quiet evenings, each piece infused with love for the child they awaited. The words still amazed her. What had begun as her solitary journey had transformed into a shared adventure. "1 month to go," she murmured, hand cradling her belly as the baby shifted restlessly. Rick set down his paintbrush and moved behind her, arms encircling her, hands joining hers in feeling the movements. "Eager to meet us, I think." The past 2 months had passed in a whirlwind. Rick had sold his loft, and they'd found a small house with a yard and enough room for Alicia's art studio. The wedding was planned for after the baby's birth. Simple, intimate, with only friends in attendance. Neither set of parents would be there. Rick's had maintained their rejection, and Alicia's grandmother had passed away years ago. "Hungry?" Rick asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Starving. Your child apparently needs pizza with pineapple. Immediately." Rick laughed. "My child has questionable taste in pizza toppings. I'll call for delivery." As he left to make the call, Alicia moved to the window, gazing at the deepening twilight. So much had changed so quickly. Sometimes she still woke in the night, momentarily disoriented, before the solid warmth of Rick beside her reoriented her to this new reality. The doorbell rang as she was washing paint from her hands. She heard Rick's voice mingling with another, familiar but unexpected. Curious, she made her way to the living room. Eleanor Richardson stood in the entryway, elegant in a cashmere sweater and pearls, her expression a mixture of discomfort and determination. Rick's stance was protective, guarded. "Alicia," Eleanor acknowledged with a slight nod, "you're looking well." "Mrs. Richardson," Alicia replied carefully, "this is unexpected." "I came to speak with Richard." Eleanor's gaze traveled to Alicia's prominent belly, then away. "Privately, preferably. Anything you have to say to me can be said in front of Alicia," Rick stated, echoing Alicia's words to Leonard weeks earlier. Eleanor sighed. "Very well. Your father has had a heart attack." Rick's face paled. "When? How serious?" 2 days ago. Triple bypass surgery yesterday." Eleanor's composed facade cracked slightly. "He's stable, but it was close." "Why wasn't I informed immediately?" Rick demanded. "He forbade it," Eleanor admitted. "I'm here against his wishes, but you're his son, his only child. Whatever has happened between you, you should know." Rick ran a hand through his hair, conflict evident in his expression. Despite everything, Edward Richardson was his father. "Which hospital?" "Presbyterian. Room 412. Eleanor hesitated, then added, "He may not welcome your presence." "I understand." Rick's tone was neutral. "Thank you for telling me." Eleanor turned to leave, then paused, looking directly at Alicia for the first time. "You've won, you know. He's lost everything that mattered to him, his son, his health, his certainty. This isn't about winning or losing, Mrs. Richardson," Alicia replied evenly. "It's about love, something your husband never seemed to understand. Flash of something. Recognition, perhaps. crossed Eleanor's features before she nodded once and departed. When the door closed behind her, Rick slumped onto the couch, face troubled. "Will you go see him?" Alicia asked, sitting beside him. "I don't know." He took her hand, fingers tracing her engagement ring. "Part of me wants to. Another part remembers every cruel word, every threat, every attempt to control my life." "He's still your father," Alicia said softly, "whatever his faults." Rick studied, her face wonderingly. "After everything he's done to keep us apart, you're encouraging me to see him." "I'm encouraging you to follow your heart." She squeezed his hand. "Hatred and resentment only poison the one who carries them. If seeing him would bring you peace, then go." Rick gathered her close, face buried in her hair. "What did I do to deserve you?" he murmured. "Most women would want me to cut all ties." "I'm not most women," Alicia reminded him with a small smile. "And I know what it's like to lose family. I wouldn't wish that emptiness on anyone, not even Edward Richardson." The hospital corridor stretched before Rick, each step toward room 412 heavier than the last. What would he say to the man who had tried to destroy his happiness? Who had cast him aside for choosing love over family obligation? Outside the door, he paused, gathering himself. Through the narrow window, he could see his father, diminished somehow, skin sallow against white sheets, tubes and monitors surrounding the once imposing figure. The sight stirred complicated emotions, lingering anger, yes, but also an unexpected surge of compassion. Edward's eyes were closed, but they opened as Rick entered the room. Recognition followed by shock, then a shuttering of expression into studied neutrality. "Mother told you?" Edward said, voice weaker than Rick had ever heard it. "Yes." Rick moved to the bedside, physician's eyes automatically assessing the monitors, the incision visible above the hospital gown. "Triple bypass. How's the pain?" "Manageable." Edward regarded him warily. "Why are you here?" "You're my father." The simple truth hung between them. Edward looked away. "I released you from that obligation when you chose her." "Love isn't an obligation," Rick replied quietly. "Not for Alicia, not for you. I'm here because I wanted to be, not because I had to be." Silence stretched between them, filled with the soft beeping of monitors and the weight of unspoken words. Finally, Edward spoke. Is the child well?" The unexpected inquiry caught Rick off guard. "Yes, both healthy. The baby's due in a month." Edward nodded once, a gesture so small it might have been missed. "You'll be a father soon, then." "I already am, in every way that matters." Rick held his father's gaze. "This child may not have my DNA, but it has my heart, my name, my protection. Biology is the least of what makes a parent." Something shifted in Edward's expression, the faintest crack in the facade of disapproval. "You sound certain." "I am." Rick hesitated, then added, "We're getting married after the baby comes. Small ceremony, just friends." "Your mother will be disappointed to miss it." Edward's words carried an implication Rick couldn't quite interpret. "She's welcome to attend," Rick said carefully. "So are you, if you can accept my choices." Edward's gaze drifted to the window, where twilight had deepened into night. "When you were born," he said unexpectedly, "I held you and promised I'd give you everything my father never gave me. Security, connections, a clear path forward." His mouth twisted. "It never occurred to me that you might want something entirely different." The admission, perhaps loosened by medication or the brush with mortality, was the closest Edward Richardson had ever come to understanding. "All I've ever wanted," Rick said softly, "is the freedom to choose my own happiness, to love without conditions." Edward's eyes returned to his son's face, studying it as if seeing something new. "Your young lady—" "Alicia," Rick corrected gently. "Alicia," Edward amended. "She makes you happy?" Completely. Another long silence, then, "I'd like to meet her. Properly this time. When I'm recovered." The words, tentative and grudging, were nonetheless an overture Rick had never expected. "I'll ask her," he promised, unwilling to presume Alicia's willingness to face the man who had caused her so much pain. When Rick left an hour later, something had shifted between father and son. Not reconciliation exactly, but the first fragile bridge across a chasm of hurt and misunderstanding. Whether it would bear weight remained to be seen. 3 weeks later, Alicia woke at 3 a.m. to a strange sensation, a tightening across her abdomen, not quite painful but insistent. She lay still, counting seconds until it passed, then relaxed. "Probably just Braxton Hicks again," she reasoned. The baby wasn't due for another week. Beside her, Rick slept deeply, exhausted from a long shift at the hospital. Alicia slipped carefully from bed, not wanting to disturb him, and padded to the kitchen for water. The tightening returned, stronger this time, accompanied by a dull ache in her lower back. "Just practice contractions," she whispered to herself, rubbing her belly soothingly. Not the real thing yet. By dawn, the contractions had established a pattern, 15 minutes apart, increasingly uncomfortable. Alicia had moved to the living room, timing each wave with the clock on the wall. When Rick emerged, rumpled with sleep, he immediately noticed her focused expression. "How long?" he asked, instantly alert. "Since about 3. Getting closer together now." Rick knelt before her, taking her hands. "Why didn't you wake me?" "You needed rest. There's still plenty of time." She smiled, though it tightened as another contraction began. "Your pager would have gone off if it was urgent, Dr. Richardson." He kissed her forehead, then helped her to her feet. "Let's get your bag. We'll go when you're ready." By the time they reached the hospital, Alicia's contractions were coming every 8 minutes, intense enough to require her full concentration. Rick supported her through each one, murmuring encouragement, his medical knowledge temporarily overridden. By the more primal role of partner, Dr. Walker examined Alicia with gentle efficiency. 4 centimeters dilated already. This little one's eager to meet you. The hours that followed blurred into a landscape of pain and determination. Rick remained by Alicia's side, wiping her brow, offering ice chips, breathing with her through each contraction. When transition hit, brutal and relentless, he held her as she wept, body working beyond conscious control. "You're incredible," he whispered between contractions. "So strong, so brave." "I can't," Alicia gasped as another wave crashed over her. "Rick, I can't do this." "You are doing it," he contradicted firmly, "and I'm right here. We're doing this together." Dr. Walker checked her progress again. 10 centimeters. Time to push, Alicia. What followed was the most primal, visceral work of Alicia's life, bearing down with each thunderous contraction, retreating into some deep, primordial space, where nothing existed but her body's ancient wisdom and unstoppable power. Rick's voice became her only anchor to reality, his touch a critical lifeline as she surrendered to labor's raw intensity. "Something's wrong," she heard Dr. Walker say, the words reaching her from what seemed a great distance through her pain fog. "The baby's heart rate is dropping significantly with each contraction." Cold fear pierced Alicia's primal focus. "What's happening to my baby?" she gasped. Rick's face appeared above hers, professional medical concern visibly warring with personal terror in his eyes. "The umbilical cord might be compressed during contractions. Dr. Walker's going to try to reposition the baby to relieve the pressure." "If that doesn't work," Alicia panted through another crushing contraction, panic rising. "Emergency C-section." Dr. Walker answered with calm frankness, already preparing equipment. "We don't take chances with either of you." The next minutes stretched endlessly as Dr. Walker worked, Rick hovering between professional colleague and terrified partner. Alicia felt them manipulating her body, turning her to different positions, the monitors beeping ominously. "There," Rick exhaled suddenly, heart rate recovering. Relief washed through the room, but the danger had accelerated the urgency. "Push with everything you have, Alicia," Dr. Walker instructed. "We need to get this baby out now." Drawing on reserves she didn't know she possessed, Alicia bore down with renewed determination. Rick supported her back, his voice steady in her ear, encouraging each effort. With a final, monumental push, she felt the baby slip free of her body, the sensation both strange and profoundly familiar, as if her body had always known how to perform this ancient miracle. A moment of silence, then a powerful, indignant cry filled the room. "It's a girl," Dr. Walker announced, placing the squirming, vernix-covered infant on Alicia's chest. "A beautiful, healthy girl." Time stopped as Alicia gazed at her daughter's face. Tiny, perfect, with a cap of dark hair and eyes squeezed shut against the bright new world. Love overwhelming and absolute flooded through her, tears spilling unchecked down her cheeks. "She's perfect," Rick whispered, one finger gently stroking the baby's cheek. His eyes, when they met Alicia's, shone with emotion too deep for words. "You're both perfect." In that moment, as the three of them huddled together in the sterile hospital room, the family they had created against all odds felt like the most natural thing in the world. The baby turned instinctively toward Alicia's breast, ancient wisdom guiding her first meal. "What's her name?" a nurse asked, clipboard ready. Alicia looked at Rick, a question in her eyes. They'd discussed names, but made no final decision. "Luna," Rick said softly. "Luna Cole Richardson, if that's all right with you." Alicia nodded, heart too full for speech. Luna, moon goddess, light in darkness. And Richardson, the name that had once represented rejection, now offered freely, claiming this child as his own in every way that mattered. As the medical team busied themselves with afterbirth and measurements, Rick knelt beside Alicia's bed, taking her free hand in his. "I know this isn't the most romantic timing," he said, voice husky with emotion. "But watching you bring our daughter into the world," he swallowed hard. "Alicia Cole, will you marry me? Right now, today, as soon as we can find someone to perform the ceremony." Alicia laughed through her tears. "We're already engaged, remember?" "I know, but I don't want to wait another day to make you my wife." Rick's eyes held hers, vulnerable and certain. "I want Luna to go home with parents who've made every possible commitment to each other and to her." Exhausted, overwhelmed, and happier than she'd ever been, Alicia could only nod. "Yes," she whispered. "Today, tomorrow, any time." "Yes." Chapters 9. Forever Family. Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital window, painting golden stripes across the bed where Alicia cradled Luna against her chest. 6 hours old, the newborn slept peacefully, tiny fingers curled around her mother's thumb, dark lashes fanned against perfect cheeks. Rick entered the room quietly, bearing a small bouquet of wildflowers and a tenderness in his eyes that made Alicia's heart swell. "How are my girls?" he asked, placing the flowers on the bedside table before leaning down to kiss Alicia's forehead, then Luna's. "Perfect," Alicia murmured. She barely cried all night, just nursed and went back to sleep. Rick settled carefully beside them on the narrow hospital bed. "I have news. 2 pieces, actually. Good news, I hope. The first definitely is, I found someone to marry us today, if you still want to." His smile was both shy and eager. "The hospital chaplain is willing. She can come at noon." Joy bubbled through Alicia's exhaustion. "Really? Here in the hospital room?" "Unless you'd prefer to. Wait for something more traditional." Rick's eyes searched hers, finding only happiness reflected back. "Nothing about us has ever been traditional," Alicia reminded him with a soft laugh. "A hospital room wedding feels perfectly appropriate." "That's settled then." Rick hesitated before continuing. "The second piece of news is My parents are here, in the waiting room. Surprise rendered Alicia momentarily speechless. Both of them. Your father, too. Rick nodded. Mother called him when I texted her about Luna's birth. Apparently he insisted on coming, though he's barely been released from the hospital himself. What do they want? Alicia asked, instinctively drawing Luna closer. To meet their granddaughter. Rick's tone remained neutral, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed his own mixed feelings. And to attend the wedding, if we'll allow it. Alicia looked down at Luna, considering. This innocent child deserved every possible love, every connection that might enrich her life. Could she deny her a relationship with her grandparents because of past hurts? Do you think they've changed? She asked finally. Or is this just temporary sentiment that will fade? I don't know, Rick admitted. My father's heart attack seems to have shifted something in him. Whether it lasts... He shrugged. I've told them our conditions. No criticism, no attempts to control our lives, full acceptance of you as my wife and Luna as our daughter. And they agreed. Father didn't exactly promise, but he didn't object either. Rick's mouth quirked in a half-smile. For him, that's practically enthusiastic approval. Alicia considered the olive branch being extended, weighing years of pain, against the possibility of healing. Finally, she nodded. They can come in, and if they genuinely want to witness our wedding, I won't object. Rick's relief was palpable. Thank you, he said softly. Not for them, but for Luna. And for me. The Richardsons entered the room with uncharacteristic hesitancy, Eleanor elegant, despite the early hour, Edward moving with the careful steps of recent surgery. Their eyes went immediately to the bundle in Alicia's arms. Richard told us her. Name is Luna, Eleanor said, breaking the awkward silence. She's beautiful. Would you like to hold her? Alicia offered, surprising herself with the gesture. Eleanor approached cautiously, as if afraid of rejection. When Alicia transferred Luna into her arms, the older woman's composure briefly faltered, eyes suspiciously bright as she gazed at her granddaughter. She has your coloring, Eleanor said to Alicia, then glanced at her son. But something in the shape of her face reminds me of Richard as a baby. Edward remained at a slight distance, watching. May I? He asked gruffly, extending his arms with unexpected vulnerability. Eleanor transferred the baby to her husband's hold, guiding his arms into proper position. Edward Richardson, imperious, commanding, accustomed to bending others to his will, stood transfixed by 7 pounds of newborn perfection. Hello, little one, he murmured, voice gentler than Alicia had imagined possible. Welcome to the world, Luna yawned, stretching like a tiny starfish in her grandfather's arms, oblivious to the complex emotions surrounding her birth. Edward looked up, meeting first his son's eyes, then Alicia's. Thank you, he said simply. The words contained volumes, acknowledgement of past wrongs, tentative hope for reconciliation, gratitude for this moment of grace. We're getting married at noon, Rick told them. Here in the room, nothing fancy, just vows and whatever paperwork. Makes it legal. We'd be honored to witness, Eleanor replied quickly before her husband could speak. If you truly want us here, Alicia looked at Rick, finding her own cautious hope mirrored in his expression. Family should be together for important moments, she said. Luna deserves to have her grandparents at her parents' wedding. Edward cleared his throat, clearly struggling with unaccustomed emotion. I have something for you, for Luna. He carefully returned the baby to Alicia's arms, then withdrew a small velvet box from his pocket. This was my grandmother's. Family. Tradition says it goes to the first granddaughter. Inside nestled a delicate gold locket, antique filigree surrounding a small diamond. It's lovely, Alicia said sincerely, touched by the gesture and its implicit acceptance. Too small for her now, of course, Edward acknowledged, But someday. The moment marked a turning point, not forgiveness exactly, but the first tentative step toward reconciliation, with Luna as the bridge between past hurts and future possibilities. By noon, the hospital room had transformed. Nurses had brought in flowers from the gift shop, arranged chairs for the small gathering, even found a white blanket to wrap Luna in for the occasion. Alicia wore a simple blue dress Eleanor had purchased from the boutique across from the hospital, her hair arranged with fresh flowers by a nursing assistant with unexpected styling skills. The chaplain, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, positioned Rick and Alicia facing each other beside the hospital bed, with Luna nestled in a bassinet between them. The Richardsons sat quietly in the corner, Edward still moving gingerly from his surgery, but determined to witness the ceremony. "We gather in unusual circumstances," the chaplain began with a warm smile, "to celebrate love in its most beautiful forms. The love between partners choosing to join their lives, and the love for a child who has just entered this world." Alicia gazed up at Rick, finding in his eyes every promise she'd ever needed. How strange and wonderful that their journey had led here, from college sweethearts to heartbroken strangers to partners reunited by fate's unexpected kindness. "Richard and Alicia have written their own vows," the chaplain continued. "Richard, whenever you're ready." Chapter 10. Full circle. 6 months passed in a beautiful blur of midnight feedings, first smiles, and the gentle rhythm of a family finding its footing. The small house Rick and Alicia had purchased filled with Luna's laughter, her personality emerging more distinctly each day. Stubborn like her mother, observant like her father, with a joy that was entirely her own. On a perfect spring morning, Alicia stood in their garden, watching Rick push Luna in the infant swing they'd hung from the old oak tree. Her daughter's delighted giggles floated through the air, mingling with birdsong and the scent of newly blooming flowers. "Hiya, Daddy," Luna demanded, though her limited vocabulary made it sound more like "Hi-ya." Rick obliged, his face alight with the special joy reserved for fathers, completely besotted with their daughters. "Just a little higher, princess," he cooed, his hands never leaving the swing's safety harness. Alicia's heart swelled watching them together. In the months since Luna's birth, Rick had proven himself the father every child deserved. Patient during sleepless nights, eager during developmental milestones, protective always. Not once had he shown any hesitation in claiming Luna as his own, making her Alicia's family name merely a middle name on Luna's birth certificate, with Richardson proudly in place as her legal surname. "What are you thinking about?" Rick asked, catching her expression as he slowed Luna's swing. "You have that look again." "What look?" Alicia teased, moving closer to them. "The one where you're seeing something beautiful that the rest of us can't." He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her against his side while keeping one hand on Luna's swing. "I was thinking about family," Alicia admitted. "About how sometimes the families we create are stronger than the ones we're born into." Rick kissed her temple. "Speaking of family, my parents called this morning while you were in the shower. They want to take Luna for the weekend." He raised an eyebrow. "Think you can bear to be separated from her that long?" The Richardsons' transformation over the past months had surprised everyone. Weekly visits had become a fixture, with Edward particularly enchanted by his granddaughter. The man who had once demanded rigid adherence to family expectations now got down on the floor to play with Luna, seemingly unconcerned with his dignity. "I'll miss her terribly," Alicia confessed. "But a weekend alone with my husband does sound tempting." Rick's eyes darkened with desire. "Very tempting," he agreed, voice dropping to a register that still sent shivers down Alicia's spine. Their intimate moments had become precious treasures in the beautiful chaos of new parenthood. Stolen kisses in the kitchen, while Luna napped, whispered declarations of love in the darkness after she was finally asleep. Occasional afternoons when Eleanor insisted on grandmother time and shooed them out of the house for a few hours alone. Luna fussed in her swing, arms reaching toward. Alicia, Mama, up! Alicia lifted her daughter, breathing in the sweet baby scent that never failed to center her. You want to go see Grandma and Grandpa this weekend? Play with all those new toys Grandpa keeps buying? Luna clapped her hands excitedly. At not quite 7 months, she already recognized the mention of her grandparents, who spoiled her shamelessly. That's settled then, Rick said, gathering both his girls into an embrace. And I have plans for you, Mrs. Richardson. That evening, after Luna had been bathed, read to and sung to sleep, Alicia joined Rick on the porch swing, curling against him as twilight painted the sky in watercolor hues. These quiet moments had become a ritual. Time to reconnect after. The day's demands to remember they were not just parents but partners. I had an interesting patient today, Rick said, his arm draped comfortably around her shoulders. Young woman, first pregnancy, terrified. Reminded me of you when you first came to the clinic. Poor thing, Alicia murmured. Is she alone too? She was. Father bailed when she told him, but she brought someone with her today, her mother. Apparently they've reconciled after years of estrangement. Rick pressed a kiss to Alicia's hair. Made me think about second chances. How precious they are. Alicia nodded against his chest, thinking of their own journey. Some things are worth fighting for, worth forgiving for. They sat in comfortable silence, the swing's gentle motion soothing. Finally, Rick spoke again, his voice tentative. Have you thought any more about what Dr. Walker mentioned at your last checkup? Alicia's hand drifted to her stomach reflexively. Dr. Walker had assured her at her 6-month postnatal visit that she'd healed perfectly, that there was no medical reason to wait if they wanted to expand their family. I have, she admitted, but Luna's still so young, and my art is just starting to sell consistently. The timing feels complicated, Rick supplied when she hesitated. Yes, but also, Alicia tilted her face up to his. When I think about having a baby that's part of both of us, a sibling for Luna, I feel this rightness. Rick's eyes softened with emotion. I feel it too, but there's no rush, love. We have a time, do we? Alicia asked quietly. Life has taught me how quickly everything can change, how precious each moment is. Rick contemplated her words, his expression thoughtful. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying maybe we shouldn't wait too long. Maybe we should let life surprise us. She reached up to touch his face, the stubble on his jaw rough against her palm. I stopped taking birth control last month. I was going to tell you this weekend. Joy blazed across Rick's features. Really? You're sure? I'm sure I want a family with you, the one we already have, and whoever else might join us. Alicia smiled up at him. Luna deserves siblings to love, to fight with, to grow alongside. Rick captured her lips in a kiss that told her exactly how he felt about her decision, tender yet passionate, deepening as she melted against him. When they finally parted, both breathless, his eyes shone with emotion. Have I told you today how much I love you? He whispered. You have, but I never tire of hearing it. I love you, Alicia Richardson, beyond reason, beyond measure. The weekend at the elder Richardson's estate passed in a flurry of pampering and passion. Rick had booked the honeymoon suite at a historic hotel downtown, surprising Alicia with couples massages, room service, and uninterrupted hours to rediscover each other without listening for a baby monitor. Sunday evening found them driving to collect Luna, both eager to see their daughter despite thoroughly enjoying their time alone. I miss her little face, Alicia confessed as they turned up the long driveway to the Richardson estate. her little hands grabbing at everything. Her laugh, Rick added. Nothing in the world sounds better. Eleanor greeted them at the door, elegantly dressed as always, but with a softness about her that parenthood had revealed. She's in the sunroom with Edward. Just had her dinner. They followed her through the mansion that had once represented everything forbidding about Rick's family, but now held new associations, holiday dinners, Luna's first Christmas, tentative but growing connections. In the sunroom, an extraordinary sight awaited them. Edward Richardson, former titan of industry and arbiter of family destiny, sat on a blanket spread across the floor, making silly faces at Luna, who giggled uncontrollably from her baby seat. "Who's the prettiest girl in the world?" he cooed in, a voice no business associate would recognize. "Who's going to run the whole company someday? Starting her early on the family business, father?" Rick asked with gentle humor. Edward looked up, not the least embarrassed at being caught in such an undignified position. "She has the Richardson instinct for leadership," he declared proudly. "Watch how she already directs everyone's attention." As if to prove his point, Luna spotted her parents and gave a squeal of delight, arms reaching toward them insistently. Rick scooped her up, covering her face with kisses until she giggled and patted his cheeks. "Did you have a good time with Grandma and Grandpa?" Alicia asked, accepting her own enthusiastic hug. "She was an angel," Eleanor assured them. "Edward hardly put her down the entire weekend." The elder Richardson cleared his throat, rising from the floor with as much dignity as he could muster. "There's something your mother and I would like to discuss with you both. Should we move to the study?" Alicia and Rick exchanged curious glances, following Edward and Eleanor to the imposing room where, over 2 years ago, Rick had been issued the ultimatum that temporarily ended his relationship with Alicia. The symmetry wasn't lost on any of them. "First," Edward began, surprisingly diffident, "we want to thank you for allowing us to be part of Luna's life. And yours." He directed this last bit to Alicia specifically. "Luna deserves to know her grandparents," Alicia replied simply. "We've been thinking about the future," Eleanor continued, "about what kind of legacy we want to leave for our granddaughter, for all our grandchildren," she added with a meaningful glance at Alicia's midsection. Alicia's hand moved protectively to her belly. "How did you know?" Eleanor smiled. "Mother's intuition. I suspected last month when you declined wine at dinner. Am I wrong?" Rick looked questioningly at Alicia, who shook her head, wonder in her eyes. "I wasn't entirely sure until yesterday. I took a test while you were getting breakfast." The joy that transformed Rick's face was incandescent. "You're pregnant? Already?" "About 6 weeks, I think," Alicia confirmed, laughing as Rick pulled her into a careful embrace, mindful of Luna between them. "This is wonderful news," Edward said with genuine pleasure, "which makes our proposal all the more timely." He withdrew a thick envelope from his desk drawer. "We've established a trust for Luna, and for any siblings who might join her. The Richardson Bembley Legacy Trust." Rick tensed slightly. "Father, we've discussed this. I don't want strings attached to gifts for our children." "No strings," Edward promised. "The money is theirs, to be used for education, business ventures, charitable work, whatever path they choose." He met his son's skeptical gaze directly. "I've learned my lesson about trying to control others' lives. This is about providing opportunities, not dictating choices," Eleanor added softly. "We want to be part of helping them become whoever they're meant to be, not who we think they should be." The sincerity in their words was unmistakable. 2 years ago, such a statement from Edward Richardson would have been unimaginable. Yet here he stood, humbled by love for a grandchild who carried not a drop of his blood, offering a gift with no conditions attached. "Thank you," Alicia said simply. "We'll make sure they understand the privilege they're being given and the responsibility that comes with it." Edward nodded, seemingly satisfied. "There's one more thing. I've spoken with the board at Northeastern Community Hospital. They're establishing a new prenatal care program for underserved women, comprehensive services regardless of ability to pay. Rick raised an eyebrow, suspecting where this was leading. They need a medical director, Edward continued. Someone with both excellent clinical skills and genuine compassion. I suggested they consider you, Richard. Me? Rick was genuinely surprised. Father, I appreciate the thought, but if this is another attempt to guide my career... It's not, Edward interrupted. The suggestion was based solely on merit. Your work with high-risk pregnancies has been exemplary, and your manner with patients from all backgrounds is, well, it's better than mine ever was. The admission clearly cost him, but he continued. The decision is entirely yours. I simply opened a door. You choose whether to walk through it. The offer was tempting. Rick had often spoken of wanting to make quality prenatal care more accessible, especially after witnessing Alicia's initial concerns about affording proper medical attention. I'll consider it, he said finally. Thank you for thinking of me. As they prepared to leave, Luna drowsy against Rick's shoulder, Edward stopped Alicia with a gentle touch on her arm. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. What I said about you all those years ago, that you weren't good enough for our family, was not only cruel, but entirely wrong. Alicia studied the man before her, seeing both the imperious patriarch who had caused so much pain and the humbled grandfather who had learned to value what truly mattered. Thank you for saying that. You've made my son happier than I've ever seen him, Edward continued. You've given us a granddaughter who brings indescribable joy, and now, he glanced at her still flat stomach, another miracle on the way. Family is what we make it, Alicia replied softly. Sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones we choose, not the ones we're born with. Later that night, after Luna was settled in her crib, Alicia and Rick lay entwined in their bed, his hand resting protectively over her abdomen where their second child grew. So, Rick murmured against her hair, another baby. Are you happy? Terrified, Alicia admitted with a soft laugh. Excited, grateful. She turned in his arms to face him. Mostly, I'm in awe of how life works. 3 years ago, I was heartbroken, certain I'd never see you again. Now we're married with the most beautiful daughter and another baby on the way. Do you believe in fate? Rick asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin. That some things are meant to be, no matter what. Obstacles arise. Alicia considered the question, thinking of the unlikely series of events that had reunited them, her unexpected pregnancy, Leonard's abandonment, her choice of that particular clinic, Rick being assigned to her case that day. I believe love finds a way, she said finally, that when it's real, truly real, the universe conspires to give second chances. Rick's kiss was tender, reverent, a promise renewed with each touch. I'll spend my life earning the second chance we've been given, he whispered against her lips. We both will, Alicia agreed, nestling closer to the man who had once broken her heart and now held it more securely than ever. Together. As moonlight painted silver patterns across their bed, Rick's hand remained over the new life growing within her. A tangible symbol of their love's endurance, their family's expansion, their story's continuation. Luna slept peacefully, in the nursery down the hall, secure in the knowledge, even at her young age, that she was cherished beyond measure. And in the quiet darkness, Alicia felt a completeness she had once thought impossible to achieve, a heart not just mended, but made stronger at its broken places, a love tested by fire and forged into something unbreakable. I love you, Ricky murmured, already drifting towards sleep. You and Luna and this new little one, more than I ever knew was possible. I love you too, Alicia whispered back. Always. The paintbrush pendant, which had never left her neck since their reconciliation, rested between them, a reminder of first love, of pain endured, of beauty created from brokenness. Beside it now lay the gold band of her wedding ring, symbol of promises made and kept. As sleep claimed her, Alicia's last conscious thought was one of profound gratitude. For the man beside her whose steady heartbeat synchronized with hers, for the miraculous daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall, for the new life already growing within her womb, and for the beautiful certainty that their love story, once shattered by fear and prejudice, had found its way through pain and redemption to the most perfect ending imaginable. Not an ending at all, but a magnificent new beginning, proving that sometimes the things most brutally broken can be reforged into something far stronger than before.
Thanks for watching!